Okay, it looks like we have most of the attendees in the queue, so we're going to get rolling here. Again, welcome to the Future Proofing the Workforce, Turning Insights into Readiness webinar. I am your host, Rich Portalance, and I welcome the Journeys Map webinar. This is our first in a series of conversations we're planning on topics around the workforce readiness, skill building, and jobs of the future. If you or someone you know would like to be a panelist in the future, please reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. Likewise, we encourage sharing this content with friends and associates who have interest and are connected to the workforce of tomorrow. Today, we're excited to have two fantastic speakers, Will Markow, CEO of FourOne Insights, and Judy Steingass, Director of Customer Experience for Journeys Map. Our format today for today's discussion is presentation style. So I'm going to introduce Will first, and then Judy will come forward with information on what makes Journeys Map unique and powerful. Um, Before we get going, a couple housekeeping items that we would like to go through. Attendees will be muted throughout the webinar, but questions for panelists can be sent via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We will leave time at the end of the presentations to address your questions, so please ask away. We are scheduled for an hour, so we'll be sure to end by the top of the hour. And finally, the materials presented today will be sent to all attendees along with a link to the video recording the week following Thanksgiving. So keep an eye out for that, and then you can share away. So first, let's kick off with introductions. Will, you want to give the audience a little intro on who you are?
Me too, Rich. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. Really excited for this discussion today. I think it'd be a fun one. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Will Markow. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called FourOne Insights, and we provide research, advisory, and analytics support for organizations who are really trying to better understand the impact of emerging technologies on the workforce. And I've personally been analyzing the cybersecurity workforce now, as well as the tech workforce more generally, for about 13 years. Have released a number of reports on these topics, have testified in Congress on expanding the cybersecurity talent pipeline. And so today I'm excited to share with you some of the latest and greatest research on what we're seeing in the space.
Fantastic, and thank you, Will. That sounds outstanding. Judy Steingass.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our today's focus around skills and what that can do for your organizations as when you're developing that talent pipeline that's so important. Journeys Map is really a data-driven solution that allows employers to really build that future-ready workforce, and we'll be working with Will to think about what those skills are, what they're looking like in this ever-changing world. So excited to be able to talk a little bit about how Journeys Map may be a solution for some of the issues that Will is going to bring forward and share with us today. So I look forward to that. So enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Judy. And as we all know, collaboration is so critical in today's world as things move faster and faster. As some people may know, Journeys Map provides the most comprehensive career exploration and mapping tool available today, at least in our opinion. And a challenging area that is frequently heard is how best to identify and address the impact that quickly evolving and disruptive technologies can have. This is an impact that is felt both on a worker's individual career journey and by organizations as they assess their own critical skills needed for the future. AI especially has accelerated the pace of job change, tracking and recalibrating and preparing to take advantage of these skill changes has never been more critical. For this reason, we have invited our partners at FourOne Insights to present on emerging workforce trends and implications for how organizations can future-proof and prepare for AI and other emerging and disruptive technologies. FourOne Insights is a research and advisory firm, as Will pointed out, working with global employers, educators, think tanks, governments, and workforce agencies to help them prepare for emerging and often disruptive workforce trends in fields such as AI and cybersecurity. What makes FourOne Insights stand out is by working closely with customers to craft tailor-made recommendations and actionable next steps to address big talent questions facing organizations and communities today. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Will. And Will is, he's a little bit shy in his intro. He's internationally recognized expert on the future of work, skill-based hiring, and the evolving workforce. He has advised Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and multiple White House administrations, and his research has been featured in outlets such as the New York Times, CNBC, and the Wall Street Journal. Markell previously spent 12 years at labor market intelligence firm Lightcast, where he led workforce research and helped launch cyberseek.org, a widely used cybersecurity career resource. Will.
Wonderful. Well, Rich, thank you so much for the introduction, and really excited to speak alongside you and Judy today. So, really, I'll go ahead and pull up some slides because I want to add some visual to the color that I'll be providing. So let me know if you can see my screen all right. Perfect. Well, as Rich mentioned, I am founder and CEO of FourOne Insights. I've been analyzing now the tech workforce for about 13 years. And in particular, I've done a lot of work looking at the cybersecurity workforce, which I'm really going to dive into a little bit today because I know that many of Journeys Map clients are in the cybersecurity space, and we continue to do a lot of work within the cybersecurity ecosystem as well. And so it's also one of the most critical fields for us to be able to really get a handle on what's happening in the workforce because it's rapidly evolving, but it also has so many important implications for the entirety of our digital infrastructure. Because if we don't have a secure digital infrastructure, then pretty much everything we're doing online comes to a screeching halt, as we often see with some of the recent breaches. So really what I'm going to do today is give you a panoramic view of some of the things that we've been seeing across the cybersecurity workforce and talk about some of the implications for how you can actually think about future-proofing your workforce in response to some of those challenges. And I think that this is, really a critical problem that has been around for a long time, right? We've heard for many years, for as long as I've been looking at this space, that employers, they can't find the talent that they're looking for. They're telling us that they're struggling to find cybersecurity workers for many of the most critical roles, and that's really putting our digital infrastructure at risk. But on the other hand, we're also starting to hear that many college students and graduates of cybersecurity programs are saying, well, hey, wait a minute, I heard that if I got a degree in cybersecurity, I'd be swimming in all these job opportunities, and that isn't always the case. And so regardless of which of those viewpoints you might sympathize with more, I think it's clear that the cybersecurity talent pipeline is broken. There's something about it that just isn't working as well as it could be. And so we need to try and get to the bottom of it, ideally in a data-driven manner, to really unpack why it's broken and what we need to do in order to fix it. Of course, if you want to prepare people for the cybersecurity workforce and fix that broken pipeline, well, you have to know something about it because you can't prepare workers for jobs you don't know anything about. And that's really what the crux of my research has been throughout the entirety of my career. It's really trying to demystify what's happening both in cybersecurity jobs as well as other fields to really unpack what needs to happen in order to expand talent pipelines and give more opportunities to more people, while at the same time helping employers fill jobs more effectively. And so that has resulted in a number of reports and other research articles and commentary that I've put out over the past decade plus. And it's also really culminated in the development of the tool that Rich mentioned earlier called cyberseek.org, where I helped to develop this tool when I was at Lightcast in partnership with CompTIA as well as the folks at NICE, that really intends to quantify supply and demand for cybersecurity jobs across the United States. If you haven't gone to CyberSeek, I strongly recommend checking it out. It has great data on the cybersecurity workforce, has a career pathway as well that can be useful for helping people to better understand what opportunities there are to enter into and advance within the field. And it's, I think, still a great resource for anybody who's interested in learning more about the field. And today, a lot of what I'll be sharing with you is going to be data that comes from either CyberSeek or other research that we've released at FourOne Insights to better understand what's truly happening within the cybersecurity workforce and really try to quantify what is occurring at a pretty granular level. And as Judy mentioned, we really need to look at the level of individual skills because that's often where disruption is occurring in the market. And so we'll start to peer under the hood and try to unpack what's really happening in the cybersecurity workforce. So with that, what are the data telling us about the cybersecurity workforce? And what are the implications for how we think about building our cybersecurity ecosystem? Well, unsurprisingly, we've seen that over the past few years, digital threats, they only continue to rise. And as a result, demand for cybersecurity workers only continues to rise as well. Over the past 12 months, we've seen over 500,000 job openings for cybersecurity workers being posted across the United States. And that's in addition to over 1.3 million existing employed cybersecurity workers. So it's already a large field that it accounts for over 10% of the total IT workforce, but it's also continuing to grow. Over the past 5 years, we've seen about 42% growth in employed cybersecurity workers and information security analyst roles. And that is one of the fastest growth rates that we've really seen across IT, especially during a period where a lot of IT jobs have not grown as fast as they historically have. Of course, whenever you see rapid growth in really any field, cybersecurity or otherwise, you often see growing pains. And as a result of this rapid growth, we do see evidence that supply of cybersecurity workers is struggling to keep up with demand. At the latest tally, we've seen that over the past 12 months, we estimate there were only about 74% of the available skilled cybersecurity workers needed to fill all of the jobs that employers were demanding. And as a result of this, it's driving up salaries. On average, we're seeing that cybersecurity roles are commanding salary premiums of almost $11,000 over other IT roles, which are already pretty highly paid roles. And this means that these jobs are a significant line item now for many organizations, and that's probably only going to continue to put upward pressure on salaries if the growth rates that we've seen continue within the field. Now, I know that Journeys Map does a lot of work in San Diego. I know some of the folks on the webinar today might be in San Diego. So we also want to pull some data looking specifically at the San Diego market to give you a flavor of what's happening at a more local level. And what we've been seeing is that there is robust demand in San Diego as the rest of the country, and it definitely tracks with a lot of what we're seeing nationwide. Over the past 12 months, there are about 5,500 job openings for cybersecurity roles on top of over 15,000 existing employed cybersecurity workers. There's been rapid growth in the region. But just as we see nationally, we only see about 3/4 of the jobs that employers are demanding can currently be filled with existing cybersecurity workers. And so the talent shortage that we see nationally is definitely present locally within San Diego as well. Now, whenever you see these talent shortages, that means, well, you got to bring more people into the field if at all possible. And that means that we also need to be tapping into new pools of talent that perhaps haven't transitioned into cybersecurity as much as they have, as much as we would have liked in the past. And I think the first most obvious place to look is, well, who accounts for half of our population? Women do. And for a long time, there has been a push to try and increase female representation within the cybersecurity workforce. But when we actually look at the data, we see that we have been going in the wrong direction when it comes to female representation in cybersecurity. And gender diversity has actually decreased about 4 times faster in cyber jobs than in IT jobs overall over the past decade or so. And this is really a critical challenge if you're trying to expand the talent pipeline, because we need as many folks as possible to enter into the field. And if it doesn't seem like we are accommodating for half of our population, then that's only going to exacerbate some of the talent challenges that we see.
So, Will, just a question on talent. I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. Is it true that, as we look at these different talent pools, is that worker burnout, tightening budgets, growing skill gaps are some of the major challenges that we are facing, and how do we aid workers to come back into this space?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that's actually a great segue as well into some of the next slides I'll be sharing. But, at a high level, everything you just mentioned, yes, yes, and yes. We have definitely seen burnout has been a major issue, again, for as long as I've been looking at the cybersecurity workforce. We've seen skill gaps, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the specific types of skill gaps that we see in the field. And I think that cybersecurity has really been facing, I would call it a unique and perfect storm of workforce challenges that have both been driving a wedge between supply and demand for a while, which I'll talk about some of those, but also have made it difficult for people to stay in the field because of the burnout, because we don't have enough folks. I think we see a dropout rate from cyber, which I don't have in the slides, but in the past we've seen it as close to 40% of people leave cyber within 5 years of working within the industry. And so it's not just that we need more people to enter into the field, we also need them to stay. But as I mentioned, I think that's a great segue into some of the next slides I want to share, which really starts to dive into why it's so difficult to bring more people into this field and why it's so difficult to future-proof workers within cybersecurity, which I think is in many ways a unique field in just how challenging it is to prepare workers for and to expand the talent pipeline in order to bring more workers and fresh blood into the industry. Now, one of the first things we see for why it's difficult to bring more people into cyber and future-proof the industry actually has nothing to do with cyber, even IT generally, but really has everything to do with some of the broader macroeconomic and demographic factors that we are seeing across the entirety of the economy. And really, what I would call attention to is a demographic cliff that a lot of people are saying we've already potentially been jumping off of. And the crux of this is that we have declining birth rates, combined with an aging population, combined with declining labor force participation, as well as recent immigration challenges. And all of these are really combining to create this perfect storm of demographic challenges that could lead to long-term talent shortages because we have people leaving the workforce and we don't have enough people coming in order to replace them. So as a result of this, we are seeing that both in cybersecurity as well as the market overall, we are potentially going to be facing long-term structural talent challenges for many years, if not decades to come. And as a result of this, many organizations, they're saying, well, hey, we really need to have as much value created by the people we already have. We need them to be as productive as possible, and we have to wring as much value out of them as possible, which means that we need them to have the latest and greatest skills that can enable them to be as productive as possible. And this is certainly true in cyber, where the field is constantly evolving. There are constantly new technologies that you need to be focused on learning if you're in the field. And as a result, we see that skills are evolving perhaps faster than they ever have in the past. In just the past 2 years, not even 2 years, since 2023, we've seen that about 23% of key skill requirements within cybersecurity have changed. And that means that effectively every 2 years, you have to re-up or reskill around a quarter of your capabilities if you're in the field. And that is a tall task for folks who are already burnt out, who are already on teams that are understaffed. Now you're also asking them to be continuously updating their skill sets. And so that's why it's so important for us to be able to pinpoint as early as possible what those emerging skills really are. And so we actually have some new research that we're going to be releasing within the coming weeks, looking at what are some of the skills that have been fastest growing in cybersecurity since 2023. And I won't go through all of these, but the top 10 are on the right. And really what we're seeing is that it's a mix of things, right? Everyone's talking about AI. You mentioned this, Rich, in your intro, that everybody's talking about that right now. And unsurprisingly, generative AI, it is the fastest growing skill that we've seen within cybersecurity, as well as a couple of other AI related skills. But it's part of the story, but not the whole story. We also see that there's rapid growth in some other fields as well, such as emerging cybersecurity fields and technologies and methodologies such as zero trust architecture, threat detection, et cetera. And so I think it's important for folks to really be thinking about all of these different types of emerging fields in addition to AI.
So we'll just You get me thinking because, when I look at this and look at the skills that you have listed on the screen, this is a very impressive list of things that are difficult to acquire quickly. So if I'm a small company versus a big company, I think there's a lot more onus. It's got to be a lot more difficult for those small companies to continually upskill their teams. They don't have the resources or bandwidth. How do they address some of these things that you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a great question because, to your point, the large companies, they can throw a ton of money at training. They have big budgets for that. If you're a small company with a shoestring budget, good luck. That's going to be a much taller task. So, there are still a few things that those companies can do. One is they can, for example, provide information to their employees about what skills are emerging and give them some time where possible to within the working day to learn some of those skill sets. Even if they're not necessarily paying for them to go to some expensive class, they can still at least give them some information and resources about where they could start to teach themselves about some of these capabilities, even if it's just YouTube videos or other free resources that a lot of those do exist. They also can help their people by giving them opportunities to, for example, join professional membership associations. There are a lot of fantastic associations out there that do a lot of the training for you. There are also opportunities to join webinars such as the one today or other events that give them exposure to more people within the industry, which in turn allows them to be exposed to more types of skills. And many of these are free or very low cost options that don't require you to, outlay $10,000, $15,000 for somebody to upskill in an emerging field. So, and just, to hammer this home, in addition to all of these skills that are emerging, they're also hard to fill and they're also pretty costly. And this is not surprising. We mentioned that whenever we see rapid growth, we also see growing pains. And if you look at some of these fast growing skills, what you often see is that we're not even close to having enough workers with these emerging skill sets who can actually fill all of the open positions. When we last looked at the data and compared how many available workers there were in cybersecurity with these skills who are actively looking for a job versus the job openings that were on the market, many of these emerging skills had as few as 10%, 20%, 30% of the workers that employers are actually demanding. And so mathematically, it's going to be impossible for all of those roles to be filled with the existing pool of skilled cybersecurity professionals.
So it
And
sounds like there has to be some new and creative ways in which to bring people into the cyber workforce. Well,
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you can't just rely upon the existing pool of talent because mathematically you're not going to be able to fill all those jobs. And if you aren't getting creative about where you're bringing new people in, then this problem is only going to persist. And we're seeing it's driving up salaries, right? Some of these skills, if you're trying to just poach from the existing talent, it's costing you $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 or more above what you're paying for other cybersecurity workers who, again, are already being paid more than most other IT professionals. So this is a significant drain on a company's resources if you have to continuously go out and try to poach somebody with these skills, which you could make the argument that even if you're not a massive employer, you still might see strong ROI by investing in training your existing workers as opposed to going out and just trying to poach from the same limited pool of talent that everybody else is going to be trying to poach from as well.
so spending money on upskilling, reskilling existing employees, even if they're not in cyber currently, maybe they have interest or they're in IT, and getting them trained up properly is probably going to be a lower cost point than trying to spend money on recruitment efforts if the people aren't out there to be hired.
Absolutely. And there are so many spillover benefits as well. I mean, I'll talk about this a little bit later as well, but you see that if you're investing in your people, then they're sticking around longer. You usually have better retention rates, and you don't have to train them up on your tech stack. You don't have to train them up on your internal culture. There's already that built-in knowledge base that they're bringing into a new role. So even if they're coming from another part of your organization, if you can find those opportunities to reskill people and redeploy them into cyber, that often is the most cost-effective and sometimes the fastest way to get more people into your cyber teams.
That makes a lot of sense.
Um, and it just, another trend that I think is worth calling out that's related to some of this skill change and the frothiness that we're seeing in the skills that are being required is that often the roles that are evolving the fastest right now are more advanced level roles. And what I often attribute this to is that many teams right now, for better or for worse, I think haven't been investing in entry level opportunities as much. And they've been pushing more responsibilities up the food chain, so to speak, to higher levels of workers within the cybersecurity team. And I don't think this is unique to cybersecurity, by the way. And as a result, we're putting even more burden on the already overburdened more senior members of the team by asking them to constantly add new skills into their toolkit. And I think that this, in the short run, seems like it's a way of building more efficient teams, but I think in the long run has many potentially deleterious consequences because A, those people are going to be more overburdened, they're going to be more likely to be burnt out, but then B, it also means we're not investing in our younger talent, our more entry-level talent, who eventually are going to become the experienced workers of the future. And so I think that's a case where our cyber talent pipeline is harmed if we're not also investing in those early career workers and making sure that they're evolving their skill sets just as the more experienced workers are.
That makes a lot of sense, Will.
Yeah. And, similarly, you can't have this conversation without talking about AI, right? And everybody is also worried, what's the impact that generative AI is going to have on the cybersecurity workforce? And so, again, you need to be able to try to anticipate to the best of your ability how different skill sets are going to evolve as a consequence of this new technology. And so what we have been doing is starting to look at ways you can try and anticipate what skills or tasks are most likely to be impacted by generative AI. And you can do this by using a framework I like to use, which compares a mix of the value of leveraging AI in a particular task or workflow or around a skill set, as well as looking at the risk and technical complexity of doing so. And if you're looking at the balance of those three, you can generally get a good sense of where there's actually going to be economic and technical viability to leveraging AI within a particular workflow. And so within cybersecurity, we're definitely seeing that some of the skills that are most likely to be impacted are related to things that people are already using ChatGPT a lot for, writing, research, but also in some cases, maybe analyzing cyber threat intelligence and continuously monitoring certain systems that it's more efficient for a machine to be able to do that than a human. But there's still going to be a strong need for humans to be able to focus on other aspects of cybersecurity work, such as risk mitigation and risk analysis, vulnerability management, governance, planning, and a variety of other skill sets that I think are going to continue to be important. So I don't see really any evidence that cybersecurity jobs are going to be completely automated out of existence, but the composition of the roles might change based upon the skills and the tasks that are required.
And how long do you see as a transition if some of these lower level jobs, as you just pointed out, do start to become more AI generated work? Do you see that changing the composition of the workforce over the next couple of years, Will?
I think it very well could. And I think that we're already starting to see in one particular way, which actually is a good segue into my next slide, that also ties into what I was saying earlier about the reduction in some entry level opportunities within many organizations. And this is actually not really a new thing in cyber. I mean, for a long time, we've seen the entry level rung of opportunity in cyber has effectively been chopped off the career ladder because the majority of jobs have been asking for either a bachelor's degree or graduate degree. They've been asking for at least 3 to 5 years of experience. And I think that AI has the potential to accelerate that trend because a lot of companies are saying we think it's going to be cheaper to use AI for some of the entry level tasks that historically we had people doing. And so as a result, they might not get rid of entry level jobs altogether, but they might say, well, we don't need as many of them. And while again, that seems like it might be, prudent or more efficient in the short run, I think in the longer term, that's really going to have some significant consequences for our talent pipelines. And I've been cautioning organizations and telling them you still need to invest in building out those entry level opportunities because can't automate everything. You don't want to automate everything. And you're going to need experienced workers 5 years down the line. And so if you can invest in building those opportunities today, then it's going to have a lot of benefits later, because this is also really a necessity right now. As a result of the chopping off of that entry level rung, what we've found is that we now actually have a surplus of entry level workers because we told people for so long, hey, go get a degree in cybersecurity or a related field. You're going to be swimming in job offers. And the problem was people listened and they said, okay, great, I'm going to go do that. But then employers, they didn't calibrate how they were hiring. And they have continued to mainly focus on hiring more experienced workers. And so as a result, we now see the situation where we have a surplus of entry level folks who can't find jobs, and we have a deficit of more experienced workers. That's even worse than what we see across the cyber workforce overall. And this is, I think, a chicken and egg problem that we were really going to have to solve if we're ever going to really fix the cybersecurity talent pipeline, because we have to find new ways to bring fresh blood into the industry. And I think one way is for organizations to think about hiring more entry-level talent, but then also another way is thinking about how do you transition people from other fields. We've already seen in some of our research that the not majority, but the a very large portion of the cybersecurity workforce that is currently working actually came from outside of IT altogether, about 38%. So already people are being reskilled and redeployed into the field. And if we can figure out how to do that in a more systematic and intentional manner, then I think that's going to go a long way towards closing the talent gap more rapidly, because then we're able to help bring in some of those experienced workers while also simultaneously looking for opportunities to expand entry-level opportunities as well.
So if you have all this non-traditional talent coming into the market and being brought to bear, which I think makes a ton of sense, how do we do you have some examples of how we create pathways to get them to the level that they need to be productive? Because we don't want to just stick them at that first level, right? We want to get them down into higher level jobs. How do you have some examples of success in that space?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also a good segue into some of the additional slides actually I'll jump to. But really it comes down to when I see organizations that are most successful at this, they're being intentional about thinking about what skills are actually needed and what tasks are being performed within different roles in their organization. Because when you take more of that skill and task-based lens to your workforce, it really enables you to unpack what skills and what requirements are appearing across your workforce. And then you can get more creative in terms of how you build out those pathways. And I've seen some organizations that have really started to do this very intentionally by building out career pathways, which I'll have an example of in a couple of slides, that gives people a clear roadmap for where they can enter into the field, what skill sets they need in order to make those transitions to different roles. And especially when tied back to training and other resources that can help people along that pathway, can be a really effective way of helping people to transition either within cyber or from other fields into cybersecurity roles that are skill adjacent and where they can leverage the transferable skill sets that they already have. No. Another thing, that I think is really beneficial to taking that skills-based lens to your workforce is that it really helps you optimize really all of your talent management decisions, whether you're trying to build, buy, borrow, or bought different components of your workforce. What we found is that if you are evaluating your workforce in terms of the underlying skills and tasks, again, you can get creative and thinking through, okay, how do I re-architect my roles around different sets of skills and different sets of tasks, and then use that to figure out what are the optimal hiring strategies for the right combinations of tasks and skills that are truly needed. And we found that when organizations do this, they can, find new strategies across different forms of talent development that can save a significant amount of money compared to what they're doing today in terms of how they're building their workforce. This is an example, for example, where we saw an organization that was able to save over $6,000 per FTE for some of their cyber analyst roles by shifting their talent development strategy. And so I think there can be real ROI in taking this skills-based lens to your workforce. And in many cases, the places where we see the greatest ROI is going to be when you focus on the build piece of that equation and training for some of those emerging skills that are highest cost and highest value. We saw this slide earlier, but the subtext here is, yeah, it costs as much as $32,000 in a salary premium above what you're already paying for some of these emerging skills. Well, guess what? Probably doesn't cost $32,000 to train someone up in that skill. It might cost a few $1,000s, and even if you give them a raise after that, which helps with retention, then you're still saving tens of thousands of dollars compared to what you'd be spending if you went out and tried to hire someone with those same skills. So you can see significant ROI on your reskilling dollar. And this is just another concrete example from an organization where they were looking across their cyber team. They were saying, okay, what are the high cost skills we're trying to hire across many of our workers? What's the impact in terms of excess salary costs and increased time to fill and productivity lost? And we actually were able to quantify how much could you save if you trained your existing workers in some of those skills rather than hiring for them out on the open market. And we were actually able to identify almost $6 million in potential cost savings just from training existing workers alone. And not every organization is going to be large enough to find $6 million worth of savings, but even if you can, just find a few $1,000s of savings per worker, that can still really add up. No. A couple last things I'll just share really quickly as well is that taking the skills-based lens to your workforce also really enables you to get creative in how you're recruiting for people. We find that sometimes if you just remove a bachelor's requirement or remove certain skill sets or certification requirements that are nice to haves, not really need to haves, similarly, you can dramatically expand your candidate pool when you're going out to hire somebody, and you can save $5,000, $10,000, sometimes $15,000 or more on average in hiring costs just by removing some of those harder to find requirements that you don't really need to have right out of the gate. So again, this can be a great way of finding some ROI in your talent development practices.
Then I like that recommendation a lot, Will, by the way. We see so many job postings that are just misaligned with the talent coming in that it's hard for entry-level workers to get in there. So that's a point well taken.
No, and it's one of my favorite moments actually from sharing some of this research is one time I shared that slide to a group of employers, and one of them came up to me afterwards and just said, I looked at that slide, and while you were talking, I went in on my phone to our ATS and removed the bachelor's requirement because I want to save $16,000 per hire. So I think it's great when you can show the data to really underscore why there's value here. And so the last example I just wanted to share here was also what we were talking about around pathways, right? We see that when organizations are able to very intentionally build out career pathways between roles that spell out what are the skills or credential gaps or other things that you're going to need to bake into your portfolio in order to make that transition between job A to job B, gives people a roadmap, makes it much easier for them to transition internally, helps to expand your talent aperture, and then also gives you a larger pool of talent that you can tap into while having many of the spillover benefits we talked about earlier in terms of increased retention rates, reduced onboarding time. And the reality is when you invest in your people, they become more invested in your company as well. So I think there are tons of great benefits to building out these pathways within your organization so that you can tap into more pools of latent cybersecurity talent.
And are there other non-conventional skills or non-traditional skills that are in demand as well?
Yeah, I think there definitely are. So, I think that there are a lot of people, they want to talk about AI, maybe they want to talk about emerging cybersecurity skills, but there are also some, I don't even know if I'd call them non-traditional, but they're traditional, but they seem non-traditional because no one's talking about them anymore. Like some of the fastest growing skills in cyber are still cloud skills. Or they might be related to regulatory frameworks or privacy, like GDPR is still a fast-growing skill within cyber. And so I think that, sometimes when we talk about non-traditional skills, it might be something entirely new or non-traditional. It also might be something that's been around for a long time, but people aren't talking about it as much anymore. Seems less sexy, but they really still need to be focusing on. And the other side of that is also uh, human skills or durable skills or whatever you want to call them, things like communication, critical thinking, those have perhaps paradoxically become more important in the age of AI. We're seeing companies are actually increasing demand for people with those strong legacy foundational skill sets. And so I think that's another case where, again, I don't know if I call it non-traditional, but I think it's a little bit surprising when people hear that some of the skills of the future are the skills that have been important for the past 50 plus years.
Yeah. Thank you, Will.
So I just want to be conscious of time. So, last thing I'd just say is that, when we're thinking about building out our cybersecurity ecosystem, there are a lot of stakeholders who you can partner with. You mentioned, Rich, earlier that smaller companies, they might have a tougher time investing in training themselves, but they can still partner with local educators. They can still work with policymakers. They can still work with others across the cybersecurity ecosystem to help build the next generation of cybersecurity workers, because it really takes a village. And so I would encourage anybody who is in this ecosystem to find partners. I think there's a strong willingness to tackle this challenge together. And we're going to get a lot further working collaboratively than in isolated silos. So I'd recommend to anybody who cares about this issue, find others with skin in the game, because they're going to want to partner with you as well. So I'll leave it there, but certainly happy to answer any additional questions or cover any other items that might be of interest.
And just a reminder to the people out there, the participants that are here, please add your questions to Q&A. Will, thank you very much for this fascinating and very insightful presentation. A lot of great information about skills that are needed and what's happening in the workforce. And now we're going to turn our attention to Judy Steingass, who spent 20 years working in education technology, working in school districts, and for the past 10 plus years has been working with Journeys Map, and she's the director of customer experience. She's got a wealth of information. She's going to give us a little bit of information and background on how Journeys Map addresses some of the skills that Will was talking about as they apply to the jobs in cybersecurity and others. Judy, I'll let you take it away.
All right, sounds good. Charlotte, you're going to share my slides. So just in following up on some of the Will's things, I really wanted to talk about how Journeys Map could be used as a strategic solution for some of the issues facing employers. By first really kind of defining what is a skills gap, between current versus needed, what are workforce capabilities needed, how as an organization are you going to look at those as Will described. So go ahead and go next. As an employer, really some of your pain points might be fast changing. Part of it's just the industry changes where there is training misalignment, really thinking about some of the training that you may have in place that's outdated, those kinds of things. And then, of course, as Will pointed out, really the skill shortages and retaining those individuals so that they don't jump to the next company, and what you can do for them. So that's really why employers could use Journeys Map to help support that. Next. So this is really how Journeys Map can help. So how would you keep on really working with those employees that you currently have? Well, you can actually have your employees go in and do a skills assessment, which you will have then insight to. And not only will it work for your current employees to see what their skills are, but they'll be able to see that gap visualization of what's missing. What might they need in order to advance to maybe a new opportunity that you have, or that you're making some changes within your infrastructure, to move those employees up to allow openings then for some entry level new people coming in. And again, as Will spoke to that, this would be a great way to do it by using this, because you can use Journeys Map not only for your current employees, but also for your applicants. So you can actually embed Journeys Map into your website to allow applicants to come in, look at job descriptions, be able to actually get assistance in building those job descriptions using AI through Journeys Map, looking at skills and tasks needed for hiring, and really then allowing both your staff and applicants via Journeys Map to identify their gaps. Um, in addition to that, go ahead next, being able to literally get their skills in to the tool, look at the skills gap, and then be attached to resources that allows them to find training, some of it free, some of it online, some of it in person, some of it at a reduced cost, but really being able to look at then some recommended resources or training um, to actually fill those gaps. And again, this would be available not only to your internal staff, but also to applicants that you may be having coming on board. And you can do that by using Journeys Map. Go ahead next.
And so, Jude, just to be clear, there's an administrative component to Journeys Map for employers to use to set it up. They can allow access to their existing workforce, and then they have a tool to go out into the applicant pool marketplace.
Absolutely. So
Fantastic.
the benefit of that, of course, is just the ability then for them to reverse match. So the applicant and the internal staff can match to your new job description, whatever that may be, or your opening that's available, and see what their gaps are, see what they may need to do in order to get there. But we also have reverse mapping. So it allows then the employer using Journeys Map to reverse map to their staff and to their applicants to see and rank who best fits, who has the smallest gaps, who has gaps, maybe what they need to do internally for training, or point um, people to the site to be able to go and get that training to help fill some of those really real-time workforce skills changes that are happening. And then also to identify, again, I think Will pointed out that not all cybersecurity staffing comes from cybersecurity former employees, that they can make that transition from other places inside the company or external applicants to be able to go in and start getting some of those trainings necessary to help fill the gaps so that they are available to work in that cybersecurity space. So we see this across a lot of industries.
Judy, a question that came in, and thank you, and I encourage people keep sending in questions. How does Journeys Map identify these gaps? What are you using in the background to make these gap analysis and skill comparisons?
You bet. So we do it through a number of different ways, really by using a number of databases that are available to us, and we use AI to go in. They can upload, you'll see just maybe a small sample here of how an individual can self-assess by, they can do a skill search, add their skills. They can put in their former occupations and it will pull automatically skills associated with that occupation into their skill set. They can also upload a resume, or they can do a skills matcher survey to bring in their skills. Then to identify the gaps, then we on the other side of it, using AI and really a lot of different APIs, to be technical, to go out and pull data from a number of sources then to look for their gaps in what the current job descriptions out there are, what they look like, what skills they're requiring, those kinds of things, including the employer's individual piece to do that matching. But then we're able to identify the gap, and then we're using AI also then to look at that gap and what kind of training opportunities are available and actually connect them to those websites, those links, those types of things to actually be able to get to training opportunities to upgrade their skills.
Thank you.
Go ahead, go next. So that was a great segue, Rich. Thank you. Into really that gap identification where it really compares the required versus their current skills. It actually gives them a list of the percentage of qualified skills that they have, but then also gives them their gap. So it highlights those areas for them. And then kind of the next point, and go ahead next, is then it's going to give those pathway recommendations. So it's going to really suggest those targeted training credentials. It's going to look at different mobility pathways. And again, it's not only just upskilling, it also could be reskilling somebody, especially an entry-level person. But now it's going to go out, it's going to find that training for a needed skill. It's a carousel, so it'll give you numbers of opportunities per skill that they can go out. It also will reveal to them what skills you will acquire by either taking that course or being a certification potentially, those kinds of things in order to grow your own staff or again, opportunities for applicants that you may have. Go ahead on
And so
next.
just to tie
Yeah.
in what Will was saying earlier, Judy, if you're going to reskill existing talent by running them through Journeys Map, you can actually see a percentage of skill match on an employee. They go in here and they do some of the testing, and now you have an understanding of what they need to do in order to become ready for this new job, and you can really be finite with the training that's required in order to get them there. Is that about right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. The other really nice thing about it is you can identify too then overall maybe some gaps in your total organization. So now I'm going to be able to look overall at skills and look at my organizational skills. What are my overall organizational skills from where I'm at today to where I'm moving to? And be able then to really start strategically planning for ongoing um, opportunities, not only in the workforce side, but also opportunities for training. What is it that we're going to need to do to move our company forward in addition to an individual? Go ahead next. So again, I've already kind of spoken to this, but again, and it kind of goes back to what Will was talking to, really being able to reduce hiring costs, being able to really improve your overall ROI. And I think Will spoke to that very well. And then I'm going to jump into the last slide, which is really kind of the work next one, we'll skip over that one, is just a kind of an example workflow. So here's how this can work. You can upload your job roles. You can then map the required skills. You can collect that employee skill data, and then you'd be able to see, as we saw earlier, being able to identify the gaps and then build those training pathways and then start tracking progress with those both current employees, but also being able to reach out then to applicants and rank them as well and start looking at if you are going to hire new or bring somebody in an entry level position, what you're going to need to track their progress as they move forward, and hopefully you retain them within your organization. On that note, we're really excited to share Journeys Map with you as a tool for both an employer as well as an employee and applicant solution. So please reach out to us for a personalized demo and we can take a deep dive and take a deeper look at it. On that note, back to you, Rich.
Well, thank you, Judy. That was tremendous, and you can see the matchup between what Will was talking about and how this new workforce needs to be to grow and develop, and what Journeys Map offers in terms of the skill development and matching. So it's a relevant tool for what we're facing today in the job market. I want to make sure that people understand If you want to get a demo, we'll send out some information in the packet. You can get hold of Judy or one of the people from Journeys Map in order to get that demonstration, and we'd be happy to chat with you a little bit more. Um, People were asking about Will's contact information. That will also be sent out following in the follow-up materials. You'll get that after Thanksgiving. If you need something sooner, just reach out to us. We're happy to share information and pass that along to your friends. Just to give Will and Judy a final chance to sign off, and any final thoughts. Will, anything you can share with the audience as a uh, end note here?
Yeah, I think I would just, double down on the need for organizations to really focus on what skills are most important in their workforce. And that's really because the pace of skill change is evolving faster than we've ever really seen in the past. And it's just not viable to rely upon external training providers to magically grow the workers you need on trees. You're going to have to actively invest in building your workforce. And that means by first understanding what skills do you need, and then second, figuring out where are there gaps, and then third, figuring out, okay, who can you help to reskill and redeploy into those roles? Because in a talent scarce environment, which realistically I think we're going to be in for a long time, given the demographics that we see, it's going to be absolutely critical for organizations to figure out how do they wring as much value out of the limited resources that they have. And that means they're going to have to invest in constantly upskilling and reskilling their people.
Well, that's great advice, and the data doesn't lie. So I think it's important to understand people who are not just talking anecdotally, but with data in mind. So, Will, thank you for sharing your insights today. Judy, anything from your end?
Really, just the final word is that we really have worked hard at building Journey's Map. We call it the K to Gray solution, not only for applicants and students, as well as organizations and secondary institutions as well, but really to provide a total career workplace exploration all the way through an employer side that allows a real concentration around skills, because we see that's where the future is moving, is more of a skills based or hiring practices versus some of the older ways of a degree specifically towards an occupation. It allows for users to really come in and explore all those different avenues, but it allows employers also to look at their current employees as well as future employees. So really a great way to support some of the needs that Will has outlined.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Will. This is the Journeys Map webinar series. As I said, we're going to be curating some of these conversations over the coming year. So please, stay with us. We'll be bringing some other industry experts to bear and hopefully have some more very engaging conversations like we had today. Everybody have a great day, and we'll see you again soon.